humping and prying and pulling and pushing on me. I'm okay. But what we forget, let me bring it back home to us. What we forget is that God knows our origin. He knows that he made us from dust. He knows our very nature is sinful. And God also knows what's best for us better than we know what's best for us. And for those that were wondering, he knows how to handle us. We assume because God doesn't cut us off when we sin that God is letting it slide or that God is incapable of dealing or bringing judgment to us. But God is merciful, so he's not going to take you out. He's going to give you opportunity to get things right because he's created you for a purpose. And if you don't fulfill the purpose, that means he's going to have to reconstruct someone else to fulfill your purpose. So he wants you to get up and say, God, I'm willing to do whatever it is that you want me to do. The art of pot making hasn't changed. There's a potter, there's a wheel. The only difference is back in the day, they probably did it manually. They had to pump it and make it go. Now they have an electronic motor, and that motor is still measured by the potter. The potter still tells it how fast it's going. So basically, when the wheel is spinning, the potter is in control of how fast the wheel is spinning in your life. Now, to me, the wheel stands for life and circumstances. Because you're on the wheel of life, on God's will, and he is constructing your life, and he's making things happen, so you will either say, yes, Lord, or he will judge you. Those are the choices. You will say yes, or you will reap the judgment for your bad deeds or your evil deeds. Now, in the word of God, it says that Israel heard. God sent word. He sent word. He sent word. When you read in chapter 17, the little paragraph before chapter 18 talks about how they disrespected the Sabbath. So I'm assuming this word that God is telling him to go and arise is coming because they're not treating the Sabbath the way they know they ought to. They've gone away from the things that their parents have taught them. I'm second generation in this thing. So my mother has taught me some things about when I come to the house of God. I know that when I come to the house of God, I give God praise. I know when I come to the house of God, I should be paying my tithes. I know when I come to the house of God, I should be doing offering, and I should find myself busy doing the things that God has for me to do. I know this. My mother has embedded this in me. However, because I'm second generation, it don't take all that. Because I'm second generation, I think my mama might have need to do that because, you know, she had a lot of sin in her life. You know, I was 6 years old when I came into this thing. What sin could I have done? I was almost perfect, and God just made me perfecter. So, as second generation, as children, I'm talking to the babies in here that's like me, second generation. I'm talking to us. We have to hold fast to the things that we've been taught because we are going to be held accountable for those things. In the Word of God, it says that we have to pass those things on to our children. So if we see the third generation saying, God, what about God? It ain't all about God. I mean, I can go to church if I want to or not. It don't matter. That's our fault, second generation. That's our fault. Because we are not passing it on. Because my mother sure enough gave it to me. So it's time for me to give it to my children. So therefore, God is angry because they are not doing what they know to do. So he says, go to the potter's house, and I'm going to show you and tell you what I need to say to them. Now, in Romans, the 9th chapter, and I was going to read it, but we'll just kind of go over it. In Romans, the 9th chapter, it talks about the clay saying, why did you make me this way? And God says, he reminds them, he told Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy on. I will have compassion on whom I choose to have compassion on. I will harden the hearts of those I want to harden the hearts of. So we have a God that's very sovereign, and he is not playing with us. He is not playing with us. I was talking to Bishop earlier, I think this week or last week, and I was telling him how at the beginning of this year, actually, no, it was the middle of last year, he came, I was in prayer, and God came to me. He said, I no longer want your sacrifices. And I was like, what I done did? I ain't did nothing. Man, you always picking on me. And I said, well, God, why? Because, I figure I can ask God why. And he said, because you give me sacrifices instead of obedience. You choose not to obey me. And then you bring your sacrifice. And although it's very sincere, I don't want your sacrifices anymore. I want your obedience. So I began to try to walk in obedience. And after he told me that, he came back and he showed me a vision. And he said, I want you to be obedient. It's mandated for you. You can't not do it. You have to do it. Well, God, sometimes, I don't know.